The Red Pulse of North High. A story of status. At North High, the pulse was more than a trend. It was the school's heartbeat. Every student wore a digital band that monitored their social standing. When the school liked you, your band glowed a soft, steady blue. Lyra watched the sea of blue from the hallway corner, her own wrist bare and quiet. She preferred the silence, but in a world where popularity was measured in light, being unlit felt like being invisible. Brio was the king of the school's digital world, his band a brilliant, blinding sapphire. He lived for the pings and the constant stream of likes. But fame is fragile. When an old, thoughtless post from years ago resurfaced, the blue light died instantly. A harsh, aggressive red began to pulse on his wrist, signaling his cancellation. The thousands who once followed him vanished, leaving him alone in the glare of the warning light. The school became a storm of digital outrage. Every phone buzzed with judgment, and the red pulse felt like a virus. Lyra escaped the noise by retreating to the old basement workshop. There, she found Pallas, a senior who spent her time fixing old clocks. Pallas's wrist was bare, just like Lyra's. "The mob thinks they are holding him accountable," Pallas said, not looking up from her work. "But they are only feeding their own addiction to anger." Pallas picked up a heavy fountain pen and a sheet of thick, textured paper. "Online judgment is instant, but real growth is slow," she explained. "A screen only lets you react, Lyra. But this lets you think." She handed the items to Lyra. "If you want to help him, give him a way to find his own voice again, away from the signal. Real influence isn't about being seen. It's about being true." Later, Lyra found Brio hiding in the shadows of the gym bleachers. He looked small, his face pale in the rhythmic flickering of his red wristband. He was frantically scrolling through thousands of hateful comments, his thumb moving in a desperate, addicted loop. The pulse was no longer a status symbol. It was a digital cage. Lyra didn't see a fallen star. She saw a boy drowning in a sea of red light. Lyra sat on the floor beside him. Her own phone began to vibrate with proximity alerts, warning her to stay away from the cancelled boy. She ignored the buzzing and reached into her bag. She didn't join the digital shouting. She simply offered him the pen and paper. "The pulse only lets you be what they want," Lyra said gently. "This lets you be who you are. Write it down, Brio. Not for the followers, but for yourself." The next morning, Lyra walked into the crowded cafeteria with Brio. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Every student's band began to vibrate with a warning red, sensing Brio's presence. The collective sound of 100 phones buzzing was deafening. Near the entrance, Pallas stood as a silent anchor. She didn't move or join the chaos, but she offered a slow, firm nod of respect, showing Lyra that real strength doesn't need to shout. Brio stepped into the light and held up the letter he had written. His voice was quiet, but it didn't shake. "I was wrong," he said to the room. "The person in that old post isn't who I am today. I'm sorry, and I'm moving on from the video, and from the pulse." The red lights on the students' wrists flashed violently, demanding more drama. But as Lyra stood firmly by his side, the aggressive flickering began to dim. Days passed, and the digital storm moved on to a new target. The workshop became their sanctuary. Brio was there every afternoon, his wrist now bare. He and Lyra sat together, replacing the shallow buzz of social media with the deep, quiet work of real conversation. They realized that one person who stays when things get dark is worth more than 10,000 who follow when things are bright. Lyra realized that the loudest voices aren't always the right ones. True role models like Pallas didn't need a blue glow. They just needed to be consistent and kind. Walking out into the warm afternoon sun, Lyra felt a different kind of connection, one that didn't need a battery or a signal. She was finally vibrating at her own frequency, surrounded by the real world and the friends who truly mattered.